Hey everyone, Two Angry Frogs here, and now that we've hit the War Within pre-patch, let's take a look at what is changing with Destruction Warlocks. Going in, we've had quite a few changes to our talent trees, and more specifically, our specialization talent tree has had somewhat of an overhaul. We have 14 new talents, and 13 of our Dragonflight talents have now been removed, in addition to some of our talents being redesigned. So how does this affect our talent builds, and does this impact our rotation coming out of Season 4 of Dragonflight? Has it impacted our defensive, self-heals, and utility in any way? In this video, we'll give you the rundown and answer these questions and more. But before we begin, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you always know what we're up to next. Now, let's get into it. As you can see from the updates to the Destruction talent trees, we have a number of new talents in both the class and specialization tree. In addition, and especially in the specialization tree, a significant number of talents have been moved and choice talents have been separated, which has changed the pathing down our talent trees quite a bit. So let's first jump into what's new. We have 4 new passive talents in the class tree. Our first new talent in the class tree is Soul Leech. This is automatically granted and cannot be unlearned and provides some additional passive defensiveness. This talent provides that all single target damage done by us and our minions grant shadowy shields that absorb 3% of the damage dealt for 15 seconds, up to 10% of our health. The second new class tree talent, Swift Artifice, just simply reduces the cast time of Soulstone and Create Hellstone. Third, Demonic Tactics gives us increases to our critical strike chance at both a 5% baseline and 10% from other sources like gear. The last, Pact of Gluttony, is an amazing additional self-heal in the class talent tree. Hellstones that you conjure for yourself are now demonic hellstones and can be used multiple times in combat. These instantly restore 25% health, plus an additional 30% over 6 seconds if we apply Soul Burn prior to using the Hellstone. This has a 60-second cooldown, so basically we have a self-heal for 55% health every minute, which is absolutely amazing. In the specialization tree, we have 10 new passive talents, half of those buffing Shadow Burn, Demon Fire, or Dimensional Rift. So we already see there's a focus on abilities that we did not significantly use in Dragonflight Season 4. We have 2 talents that directly affect Shadow Burn. First, Blistering Atrophy, which increases the damage of Shadow Burn by 20%. Also, the critical strike chance of Shadow Burn is increased by an additional 50% when damaging a target that is at or below 30% health. So somewhat of an execute. With Fiendish Cruelty, if Shadow Burn fails to kill a target that is at or below 30% health, its cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds. In addition, the Shadow Burn damage has been increased by a massive 80% in the latest class changes. We have another new talent that directly affects Demon Fire. Demon Fire Mastery, which increases the damage of channeled Demon Fire by 30% and deals damage 35% faster. And then we have 2 related to Dimensional Rift. Dimension Ripper, which gives Incinerate a chance to open a Dimensional Rift or give us a recharge if we have Dimensional Rift learned. And then Unstable Rifts. With this, bolts from Dimensional Rift do 25% of the damage dealt to nearby enemies as fire damage. Finally, we have a few new talents that provide some flat damage increases as well as reducing cast times for specific spells. These include Summoner's Embrace, which increases the damage done by our spells and minions by 3%. Devastation, which increases critical strike chance of our destruction spells by 5%. Ember Storm, that increases the damage done by fire spells by 2%. And in addition, Ember Storm reduces the cast time of Incinerate by 20%. Improved Chaos Bolt, which increases the damage of Chaos Bolt by 10% and reduces its cast time by half a second. And then finally, Indiscriminate Flame. With this, Backdraft increases the damage of the next Chaos Bolt by 5% and increases the critical strike chance of the next Incinerate or Soulfire by 35%. So with all the new talents added, what has been removed? In the class tree, we say goodbye to Grimoire of Synergy, Profane Bargain, Grim Feast, Inquisitor's Gaze, and Summon Soulkeeper. For the specialization tree, the first thing you may notice is Chaos Bolt has been removed from the top of the tree. This is now a default spell and is a very welcome change to the destruction specialization. In addition, Cry Havoc, Pandemonium, Improved Immolate, Infernal Brand, Chaos Bringer, and Grand Warlock's design have been removed from the specialization tree. So with all the changes, how does this affect our talent builds in pre-patch? I'll start by saying that both the single target and AoE rotations are certainly a more active playstyle than what we left behind. So let's start with the single target build, in which we will be adding Channel Demon Fire and Soulfire to our talent build and rotation. We take Raging Demon Fire and Demon Fire Mastery to pop off a lot of bolts and increase Demon Fire damage. For Soulfire, we'll take the Decimation talent, as this feeds directly into resetting Soulfire's cooldown on any direct damage ability critical hit. Finally, we also take the Dimensional Rift talent. Given we only have one instant cast and Conflagrate, this does give us another instant cast with 3 charges for casting on the move. You will without a doubt notice that we have a lot more active abilities than what we were used to in Dragonflight Season 4. And with the addition of Soulfire plus Decimate, it's a lot more reactive as well. Note that you will see some builds also take Shadow Burn, but as I played with that build, the rotation just did not feel like it had any natural flow to it. I personally did not notice any major uptick in DPS, and honestly, it felt terrible to play. For our Cleave build, it's a simple change. We drop the Dimensional Rift talent and pick up Havoc, and that's pretty much it. For the Mythic plus AoE build, the build does not change significantly. We'll pick up Flashpoint and Reverse Entropy for additional haste procs, and then drop Demon Fire Mastery and Dimensional Rift. Note that you can change out Cataclysm for Inferno, which has been redesigned, so Rain of Fire only costs 2 soul shards, but either way, it's much easier to get the Rain of Fire stacks going as compared to what we had in Dragonflight, and is an awesome change. As with single target, there are builds that include Shadow Burn, but as before, the rotation just did not feel like it had any natural flow to it. We've included the talent build strings for all of the builds in the video description if you want to grab those for import. For the single target rotation, you will rarely cast Cataclysm or Immolate. Our direct damage dealing abilities do crit often enough for Soulfire to reset, and when it's cast, it will reapply Immolate to the enemy. So for the opener, we'll precast Soulfire, generating a Soul Shard and applying Immolate on the enemy. Cast Summon Infernal, cast Dimensional Rift, cast Conflagrate, followed with a cast of Chaos Bolt, cast Channel Demon Fire. If Soulfire procs at this point, cast Soulfire, cast Conflagrate, followed by another Chaos Bolt. During the rotation, Soulfire procs do occur often enough to keep Immolate on the target. In 6 minutes at the training dummy, I had to cast Cataclysm only twice. So for the single target rotation, we'll cast Chaos Bolt if we're about to cap on Soul Shards, cast Soulfire whenever we get a proc, cast Conflagrate to avoid sitting on 2 charges, cast Channel Demon Fire, cast Dimensional Rift to avoid sitting on 3 charges, and then cast Chaos Bolt. You want to use Backdraft for your Chaos Bolt as much as possible. And then we'll cast Incinerate as a filler and to generate Soul Shards. As with many other rotations, this is a priority-based rotation, so you start at the top, the first condition that's true, that's what you cast. And then you go back to the top and do it again. So you will notice in the AoE build that I am no longer using Havoc actively, but rather using Mayhem to passively apply it. Havoc is still the way to go in 2-target encounters, but with the rework to Destruction, I have not experienced any issue with Soul Shard generation for AoE. You can still play a Havoc build, but for me personally, we have added so many active abilities at this point that I am foregoing it. So for the AoE opener, we'll cast Cataclysm, cast Summon Infernal, cast Channel Demon Fire, cast Rain of Fire, cast Conflagrate, and then cast Rain of Fire. For the rotation, we'll look to cast Cataclysm on cooldown, cast Soulfire if you get a Decimation proc, cast Rain of Fire if there are 3 or more enemies, cast Channel Demon Fire on cooldown, cast Conflagrate to avoid sitting on 2 charges, and then cast Incinerate to generate soul shards as needed. If you get down to 2 or less enemies, then switch over to the single target rotation. As with single target, the AoE rotation is priority based. So you'll start at the top. When you get to the first condition that's true, that's what you cast, and then you go back to the top and start again. From a stat priority standpoint, very little has changed for Destruction Warlock with the pre-patch. Stat priority starts with weapon DPS, followed by intellect and haste. Mastery and critical strike are roughly equal. Haste is valuable up to about 30%, and then we start getting diminishing returns on levels above that. As we always note, when it comes to stats and stat percentages, the above recommendations are general. To maximize your character as related to having the best stat distribution, we recommend simulating your character using Simulation Craft and raid bots. So overall, what's the good and what's the bad for Destruction Warlock after the updates? On the good side, there's definitely lower ramp up time to get to our AoE damage and rate of fire span. Shard generation appears to be improved, so it's easier to maintain the rain of fire stacks. Another great aspect is that, at least from what we've seen so far, there are multiple competing talent builds that are relatively close to one another, so you should have some choice in how you want to build your character. And finally, good or bad depending on your take, it is a much more active playstyle now. There's more reactiveness in our rotation, which I think does make it more interesting. There are without a doubt going to be some changes as we head to level 80 in the War Within and hero talents come into play. But for the next 6 to 8 weeks, we have a lot of cool stuff to play around with when it comes to destruction. As always, let us know what you think down below in the comments, and everyone, have a great day.